Today, we're taking a journey into the misty mountains of southwestern China to uncover the captivating story of the Tujia people, an ethnic group with a rich history and intriguing customs that have persisted for over 2 millennia. The Tujia, numbering over 8 million, are one of China's largest ethnic minorities. Yet for many, they remain shrouded in mystery. Who are these people who build houses on stilts, perform mesmerizing hand-waving dances, and have brides who cry at their own weddings? How have they maintained their unique identity in the face of modernization? And what can their story tell us about the preservation of indigenous cultures in a rapidly changing world? Over the next hour, we'll peel back the layers of Tujia culture to reveal a tapestry woven with ancient traditions, enigmatic rituals, and a fierce determination to keep their heritage alive. From their disputed origins as the descendants of a lost kingdom to their fight for cultural survival in the 21st century, the Tujia's journey is one of resilience, adaptation, and the enduring power of cultural identity. So sit back, open your minds, and prepare to be amazed as we delve into the world of the Tujia, a people whose story challenges our understanding of tradition and modernity, ethnicity and assimilation, and what it means to belong in our globalized age. Let's begin our exploration with the mysterious origins of the Tujia and some of their most captivating customs. 1. Ancient origins and mysterious customs. The enigmatic Tujia people. Deep in the mist-shrouded Wuling Mountains, straddling the borders of Hunan, Hubei, Guizhou, and Chongqing, lies the ancestral homeland of the Tujia people. Their story begins over 2,000 years ago, in a time when China was a patchwork of warring states and ancient kingdoms. Legend has it that the Tujia are the descendants of the Ba people, a powerful tribe that once ruled a prosperous kingdom in what is now Sichuan province. The Ba were known for their fierce warriors and unique culture, which included the worship of white tigers and a penchant for building their homes on stilts. But in 316 BC, their kingdom fell to the expanding Qin state, and the Ba people were scattered to the winds. Some historians believe that a group of Ba refugees fled east into the Wuling Mountains, where they established new communities and gradually evolved into the Tujia we know today. This theory is supported by linguistic evidence. The Tujia language, though now spoken by only a small minority, shares similarities with other Tibeto-Burman languages believed to be descended from the ancient Ba tongue. But the origin of the Tujia remains a subject of debate. Other scholars argue that they are a mixture of various indigenous groups who inhabited the region, including the ancient Wumen and Kong peoples. This complexity is reflected in the Tujia's own name for themselves, Bizika, which means native dwellers. Whatever their exact origins, the Tujia developed a rich and distinctive culture over the centuries, shaped by their mountainous homeland and interactions with neighboring groups. One of the most striking aspects of traditional Tujia life is their architecture, the famous diaojiaolo, or stilted houses. These wooden structures, raised on pillars several meters above the ground, are marvels of indigenous engineering. Built to adapt to the steep terrain and protect against flooding and wild animals, diaojiaolo houses are not just practical, they're also beautiful, with intricate carvings and paintings adorning their walls and beams. The construction of a diaojiaolo is steeped in ritual and superstition. Before building begins, a feng shui master is consulted to choose an auspicious site. The most critical part of the process is the selection and placement of the central beam, which is believed to determine the fate of the household. In a fascinating custom known as beam stealing, the future homeowner must secretly cut down a tree with a perfect natural fork in its trunk, split it in two, and bring it back to the village before dawn. This stolen beam is thought to bring good luck and prosperity to the family. Far from being angry, the owner of the stolen tree considers it an honor to contribute to a neighbor's home and future success. But the mysteries of Tujia culture go far beyond their unique architecture. Their spiritual beliefs are a complex blend of animism, ancestor worship, and borrowed elements from Taoism and Buddhism. The Tujia believe in a pantheon of gods and spirits that inhabit the natural world, from mountain deities to river guardians. One of the most intriguing aspects of Tujia spirituality is their worship of the white tiger. This majestic creature is seen as a powerful protector and a symbol of strength and courage. In some Tujia villages, you can still find shrines dedicated to the white tiger, where people make offerings and pray for good fortune. The Tujia are also known for their shamanic traditions. In times of illness, disaster, or important life events, a shaman known as a tima is called upon to communicate with the spirit world. These spiritual intermediaries perform elaborate rituals involving trance states, chanting, and animal sacrifices to appease the gods or drive away evil spirits. One particularly fascinating Tujia ritual is the ghost wedding. If a person dies unmarried, it's believed their spirit will be restless and may bring misfortune to the family. To prevent this, a posthumous marriage is arranged with another deceased single person. Effigies of the bride and groom are created, and a full wedding ceremony is performed, complete with feasting and music. The two spirits are then considered married in the afterlife, ensuring their contentment and the well-being of their living relatives. The Tujia's reverence for their ancestors is evident in another unique custom, the Magusi dance. This ancient ritual, performed during important festivals and after funerals, involves dancers donning masks representing various deities and ancestral spirits. The intricate movements of the Magusi dance are believed to drive away evil influences and honor the memory of the departed. Even in death, the Tujia's connection to their mountainous homeland is evident. In ancient times, they practiced a form of cliff burial, where coffins were placed in caves high up on steep cliffs. This practice, which ended centuries ago, was believed to bring the deceased closer to the heavens and protect their remains from disturbance. These customs, passed down through generations, have helped the Tujia maintain a strong sense of identity even as the world around them has changed dramatically. But perhaps no aspect of Tujia culture is more captivating, or more threatened, than their unique wedding traditions. Let's turn our attention to the fascinating world of Tujia love and marriage. 2. Love, tears and tradition. The fascinating wedding rituals of the Tujia. Imagine a bride on her wedding day. In most cultures, we expect to see a beaming smile, tears of joy, or perhaps a mix of excitement and nerves. But among the Tujia, a very different scene unfolds, one that has captivated and puzzled outsiders for centuries. As the wedding day approaches, a Tujia bride begins to cry. Not just a few tears of emotion, but full-throated, heart-wrenching sobs that can last for hours each day. This tradition, known as Zuo Tangjiao, or sitting in the hall and crying, begins anywhere from a month to just a few days before the wedding, depending on the local custom. But why would a bride cry before what's supposed to be one of the happiest days of her life? The reasons are complex and deeply rooted in Tujia culture and history. First, it's important to understand that in traditional Tujia society, marriages were often arranged by parents, with brides having little say in the matter. The crying ritual was seen as a way for the bride to express her reluctance to leave her family home and her sorrow at parting with her parents and siblings. The bride's crying is not a solo performance. Her female relatives, mother, sisters, aunts, and even grandmother, join in, creating a chorus of lamentation that echoes through the village. Each woman takes turns improvising mournful songs that speak of the bride's departure, the hardships of married life, and the deep bonds of family love. Here's a translation of one such crying song. I'm leaving now, dear mother who raised me. Like a bird flying from its nest. Who will care for you in your old age? My heart breaks to think of your loneliness. These songs are not just expressions of sorrow, they're also a form of oral poetry, rich in metaphor and local folklore. The ability to compose and perform these songs skillfully is highly valued in Tujia culture. In fact, a bride's crying ability is seen as a measure of her intelligence, virtue, and filial piety. A bride who cries well is considered a good daughter and is expected to become a good wife. The tradition goes beyond mere custom, it's seen as an essential rite of passage. Tujia people believe that if a bride doesn't cry before her wedding, she will have a difficult life filled with hardship and tears. By getting the tears out, before the marriage, she ensures a happier future. But the crying ritual is just one part of the elaborate Tujia wedding tradition. Another fascinating custom is the 10 Sisters accompaniment, or Shijiame, ceremony, which takes place the night before the wedding. For this ritual, 9 unmarried girls from the village are invited to keep the bride company on her last night as a single woman. These sisters sit with the bride around a mat, singing songs and sharing stories throughout the night. At regular intervals, the bride cries 10 times, and after each bout of tears, a dish of food is placed before the group. This ceremony serves multiple purposes. It's a way for the bride to bid farewell to her single life and her childhood friends. It's also a chance for the unmarried girls to learn about marriage and prepare for their own future weddings. And practically, it ensures the bride doesn't get any sleep the night before her wedding, in state of exhaustion that's thought to make her more pliable and obedient to her new husband and in-laws. The wedding day itself is a vibrant affair, full of color, music, and more tears. The bride wears a striking red dress known as the dew dress, supposedly named because brides would set out early in the morning when the grass was still wet with dew. This dress is often richly embroidered with auspicious symbols like dragons and phoenixes. One of the most visually stunning elements of a Tujia wedding is the bride's headdress. Known as a phoenix crown, it's an elaborate confection of silver, feathers, and beads that can weigh several kilograms. The weight of the crown is said to represent the heavy responsibilities the bride is taking on in her new role as a wife. As the bride is escorted to her new home, musicians play traditional instruments like the suona, a type of horn, and the drum. Firecrackers are set off to drive away evil spirits, and red paper cuttings are pasted on doors and windows for good luck. But even as she enters her new life, the bride isn't done crying. Throughout the wedding feast and sometimes for days afterward, she's expected to continue her lamentations. Only when she's cried enough to satisfy custom, and her new in-laws, is she considered properly married. These elaborate wedding customs have helped preserve Tujia culture through centuries of change and outside influence. However, like many traditional practices around the world, they're under threat in the modern era. As more young Tujia people move to cities for education and work, many are choosing to forego these time-consuming and emotionally taxing rituals in favor of more modern, simplified weddings. Some brides now fake their wedding cries, going through the motions without the deep emotional involvement of their ancestors. Yet there's also a movement among some young Tujia to reclaim and celebrate these traditions. Cultural preservation efforts have led to a resurgence of interest in traditional weddings, with some couples choosing to incorporate elements of the old customs into their modern ceremonies. The story of Tujia wedding traditions is a microcosm of the larger challenges facing indigenous cultures in our globalized world. How can ancient customs survive in the face of modernization? Can traditions evolve without losing their essence? These are questions the Tujia grapple with every day, not just in their marriages, but in all aspects of their cultural life. And perhaps no aspect of Tujia culture better exemplifies this struggle between tradition and modernity than their most famous artistic tradition, the mesmerizing Baishou dance. Let's explore how this ancient art form tells the story of the Tujia people. 3. Dancing through history. How the Tujia's Baishou dance tells their story. Picture this. It's nightfall in a Tujia village nestled in the Wuling Mountains. A bonfire roars in the center of the town square, casting flickering shadows on the faces of hundreds of people gathered in a vast circle. Suddenly, a haunting melody rises from a group of musicians playing traditional instruments, the high-pitched wail of the suona, the thunderous beat of drums, the plaintive notes of a bamboo flute. And then, as one, the crowd begins to move. Their hands weave intricate patterns in the air, fingers flexing and twisting in gestures that seem random at first but soon reveal themselves to be carefully choreographed. This is the Baishou dance, the hand-waving dance, arguably the most distinctive and beloved aspect of Tujia cultural heritage. The origins of the Baishou dance are shrouded in legend. One story claims it began as a military drill, with the hand movements representing different battle tactics. Another tale suggests it was created by a Tujia woman to communicate with her lover in secret, using hand gestures instead of words to express her feelings. Whatever its true origins, the Baishou dance has evolved over centuries into a complex art form that serves as a living repository of Tujia history, culture, and daily life. With over 70 distinct hand gestures, each with its own meaning, the dance is essentially a form of sign language set to music. These gestures tell the story of the Tujia people, their struggles, their joys, their connection to nature, and their spiritual beliefs. Some movements mimic daily activities like farming, hunting, or weaving. Others represent animals important in Tujia culture, such as the revered white tiger. Still others have more abstract meanings, symbolizing concepts like love, loyalty, or the passing of seasons. For example, a gesture where the dancers wave their hands in front of their faces like fanning flames represents the Tujia's mastery of fire and metallurgy. A movement where hands are cupped as if holding water symbolizes the importance of rivers in Tujia life. And a gesture where fingers are splayed and hands crossed at the wrist is said to represent the antlers of a deer, an animal often hunted by the Tujia. But the Baishou dance is more than just a series of symbolic gestures. It's a communal activity that brings the entire village together. Unlike many traditional dances that are performed by a select group for an audience, the Baishou dance is participatory. Everyone, from young children to the elderly, joins in, creating a powerful sense of unity and shared identity. The dance is typically performed during important festivals and ceremonies, particularly during the Tujia New Year celebrations. But it's not uncommon to see impromptu Baishou dances break out during weddings, harvest celebrations, or even as a form of evening entertainment. One of the most impressive aspects of the Baishou dance is its scalability. While it can be performed by just a handful of people, it's at its most spectacular when hundreds or even thousands of dancers participate. In fact, the Baishou dance holds a Guinness World Record for the largest folk dance, set in 2015 when over 10,000 people performed it simultaneously. The music that accompanies the Baishou dance is equally rich in cultural significance. The lyrics of the songs, sung in the Tujia language, often recount historical events, local legends, or moral teachings. Even as the Tujia language has declined in everyday use, it lives on in these songs, helping to preserve linguistic heritage. But like many aspects of traditional culture, the Baishou dance faces challenges in the modern era. As young Tujia people move to cities for work and education, fewer have the opportunity to learn the intricate gestures and meanings behind the dance. There's a real risk that this knowledge could be lost within a generation or two. Recognizing this threat, efforts are underway to preserve and promote the Baishou dance. In 2006, it was listed as an intangible cultural heritage of China, giving it official protection and support. Schools in Tujia areas have begun incorporating the dance into their curriculum, ensuring that younger generations have the opportunity to learn this important part of their heritage. There have also been attempts to adapt the Baishou dance for modern audiences. Some choreographers have created contemporary dance pieces incorporating Baishou elements, while others have experimented with fusing traditional Tujia music with modern genres like rock or electronic dance music. These efforts to keep the Baishou dance relevant in the 21st century reflect a larger struggle within Tujia culture, the challenge of balancing tradition with modernity. How can the Tujia preserve their unique heritage while adapting to the rapid changes of the modern world? This question is at the heart of our next topic. 4. Balancing tradition and modernity. The Tujia's fight for cultural survival. The story of the Tujia people in the 21st century is one of contrasts and contradictions. On one hand, there's a growing pride in Tujia identity and a renewed interest in traditional culture. On the other, the forces of modernization and assimilation threaten to erode centuries-old customs and ways of life. Let's start with language, perhaps the most fundamental aspect of any culture. The Tujia language, a member of the Tibeto-Burman language family, was once spoken by all Tujia people. Today, however, it's estimated that fewer than 70,000 people, less than 1% of the Tujia population, still speak their ancestral tongue fluently. The reasons for this decline are complex. For decades, government policies promoted Mandarin Chinese as the language of education and commerce. Many Tujia parents, hoping to give their children better opportunities, chose to speak Mandarin at home. The result is that in just a few generations, a language that had been passed down for over 2 millennia has been pushed to the brink of extinction. But all is not lost. In recent years, there have been efforts to revitalize the Tujia language. Some schools in Tujia areas now offer optional Tujia language classes. Community groups have started language nests, immersive environments where children can learn Tujia from fluent elders. And modern technology is playing a role too, with smartphone apps and online resources making it easier for people to study Tujia wherever they are. The struggle to preserve the Tujia language mirrors larger challenges facing Tujia culture as a whole. Take, for example, the traditional Tujia craft of brocade weaving. For centuries, Tujia women have created intricate textiles known as silongkapu, using techniques passed down through generations. These brocades, with their bold geometric patterns and vibrant colors, were once a vital part of Tujia material culture, used for everything from clothing to religious offerings. But as machine-made fabrics became cheap and plentiful, the demand for hand-woven brocades plummeted. By the late 20th century, the art of silongkapu was in danger of disappearing entirely. However, in recent years there's been a revival of interest in this traditional craft. Government initiatives and NGOs have set up programs to teach young Tujia women the skills of brocade weaving. Museums and cultural centers showcase silongkapu, educating visitors about its cultural significance. And perhaps most importantly, there's a growing market for these textiles among urban Chinese consumers looking for unique, handcrafted products with cultural cachet. This resurgence of silongkapu illustrates a broader trend in Tujia cultural preservation, finding new relevance and economic viability for traditional practices in the modern world. We see this playing out in various aspects of Tujia life, from architecture to cuisine to spiritual practices. Take the diaojialo, the traditional stilted houses we discussed earlier. While many Tujia have moved into modern apartments, there's a growing movement to preserve and restore these unique structures. Some are being converted into guest houses, allowing visitors to experience traditional Tujia architecture while providing income for local communities. Others are being adapted with modern amenities, creating a hybrid living space that honors tradition while meeting contemporary needs. Tujia cuisine, with its distinctive sour and spicy flavors, is finding new appreciation beyond its traditional heartland. Restaurants specializing in Tujia dishes are popping up in major Chinese cities, introducing urban diners to delicacies like sour fish soup and smoked pork with chili. This culinary renaissance not only helps preserve traditional recipes but also creates economic opportunities for Tujia people. Even in the realm of spirituality and religion, we see this delicate balance between old and new. While many young Tujia have abandoned traditional animist beliefs in favor of secular worldviews or mainstream religions, there's also a renewed interest in indigenous spiritual practices. Some Tujia are reclaiming shamanic traditions, not necessarily as a literal belief system, but as a way to connect with their cultural roots and find meaning in an increasingly complex world. Tourism has played a significant role in this cultural revival, but it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, it provides economic incentives for preserving traditional culture and creates opportunities for Tujia people to share their heritage with the world. The famous Fenghuang ancient town in Hunan province, with its well-preserved Tujia architecture and cultural performances, attracts millions of visitors each year. On the other hand, there's a risk of cultural commodification, of reducing rich traditions to simplified, marketable versions of themselves. Some critics argue that performances of the Baishou dance for tourists, for example, lack the depth and community involvement of authentic village celebrations. Education is another crucial battleground in the fight for Tujia cultural survival. In the past, mainstream Chinese education often marginalized minority cultures. But there are signs of change. Some schools in Tujia areas now incorporate elements of Tujia culture into their curriculum, teaching students about traditional crafts, customs, and history alongside standard subjects. Technology is playing an increasingly important role in cultural preservation efforts. Social media platforms allow Tujia people scattered across China to connect, share cultural knowledge, and organize events. Online databases are being created to document Tujia language, folklore, and traditional knowledge. And virtual reality technologies are being explored as a way to create immersive experiences of Tujia culture for both education and tourism. But perhaps the most powerful force in the preservation of Tujia culture is the Tujia people themselves, particularly the younger generation. Many young Tujia, even those who have moved to cities and adopted modern lifestyles, are showing a renewed interest in their heritage. They're learning traditional crafts, studying the Tujia language, and incorporating elements of Tujia culture into their contemporary lives. This cultural revival is not about returning to the past, but about finding ways to carry ancient wisdom and practices into the future. It's about creating a modern Tujia identity that honors tradition while embracing change. The story of the Tujia's fight for cultural survival is still being written. It's a story of loss and rediscovery, of adaptation and resilience. And it's a story that resonates far beyond the misty mountains of southwestern China. In an age of globalization and rapid change, the Tujia's struggle to maintain their unique identity speaks to universal questions about the value of cultural diversity and the meaning of heritage in the modern world. But as we've explored the Tujia's rich cultural tapestry, one question remains. Who exactly are the Tujia? The answer, it turns out, is more complex than we might expect. Recent genetic studies have shed new light on the origins and diversity of the Tujia people, revealing a fascinating story of migration, admixture, and adaptation. Let's delve into these genetic mysteries. 5. Genetic mysteries. Unraveling the complex origins of the Tujia people. When we think of ethnic groups, we often imagine distinct populations with clear genetic boundaries. But the reality, as modern genetic studies are revealing, is far more complex. And few groups illustrate this complexity better than the Tujia. Recent genetic research has painted a picture of the Tujia as a highly diverse population, shaped by centuries of migration, intermarriage, and cultural exchange. This research not only sheds light on the origins of the Tujia but also challenges our understanding of ethnicity and identity in China and beyond. Let's start with the question of origins. As we discussed earlier, traditional accounts trace the Tujia back to the ancient Ba people. While there's certainly cultural evidence to support this connection, the genetic story is more nuanced. Studies of Y chromosome and mitochondrial DNA, which allow us to trace paternal and maternal lineages respectively, suggest that the Tujia have diverse origins. Some genetic markers common among the Tujia are indeed similar to those found in other populations believed to be descended from the Ba. But the Tujia also show genetic links to various other groups, including Han Chinese, Hmong Mien speakers, and even populations from Southeast Asia. This genetic diversity reflects the complex history of the region. The Wuling Mountains, where the Tujia have lived for centuries, have long been a crossroads of different cultures and populations. Waves of migration, both voluntary and forced, have brought different groups into contact over the centuries. The result is a population that's genetically diverse and difficult to categorize neatly. One particularly interesting finding from genetic studies is the evidence of significant admixture between the Tujia and Han Chinese populations. This admixture appears to have occurred over a long period, with multiple waves of intermarriage and cultural exchange. The timing of this admixture is particularly intriguing. Some studies suggest that a major period of Han Tujia intermixing occurred during the Ming Dynasty, 1368 to 1644. This aligns with historical records, which tell us that the Ming government sent large numbers of Han Chinese soldiers and settlers into Tujia areas as part of a strategy to consolidate control over the region. But the genetic evidence also points to more recent admixture, continuing right up to the present day. This ongoing process of genetic exchange challenges simplistic notions of the Tujia as a discrete, isolated population. Instead, it paints a picture of a dynamic, evolving community that has been shaped by its interactions with neighboring groups. The genetic diversity of the Tujia isn't just a matter of historical interest, it has real implications for health and medicine. Different populations can have different susceptibilities to certain diseases and responses to medications. Understanding the genetic makeup of the Tujia can help tailor medical treatments and public health strategies to better serve this community. For example, Some studies have found genetic variants among the Tujia that are associated with increased risk of certain cancers. Other research has identified Tujia-specific genetic factors that influence how individuals metabolize certain drugs. This kind of knowledge can be crucial for developing effective, personalized medical care. But perhaps the most profound implication of this genetic research is what it tells us about the nature of ethnicity itself. The Tujia case demonstrates that ethnic identity is not always neatly aligned with genetic ancestry. Many people who identify as Tujia and participate in Tujia culture may have significant genetic contributions from other populations. Conversely, individuals with substantial Tujia ancestry might not identify as Tujia at all. This disconnect between genetics and identity is not unique to the Tujia. It's a pattern we see in populations around the world. It reminds us that ethnicity is as much a cultural and social construct as it is a biological reality. People can share a strong sense of common identity and culture even in the absence of close genetic ties. The genetic story of the Tujia also highlights the dynamic nature of human populations. Far from being static entities, ethnic groups are constantly evolving, influenced by migration, intermarriage, and cultural exchange. The Tujia of today are not genetically identical to the Tujia of 1,000 years ago, and the Tujia of the future will likely be different still. This understanding has important implications for how we think about cultural preservation. If Tujia identity is not tied to a specific genetic profile, then efforts to preserve Tujia culture need not be about maintaining genetic purity, a problematic concept in itself. Instead, they can focus on preserving and adapting cultural practices, languages, and traditions in ways that remain meaningful to people who identify as Tujia, regardless of their exact genetic ancestry. The genetic diversity of the Tujia also serves as a powerful argument for the value of cultural diversity. Each unique combination of genetic heritage and cultural tradition represents a distinct way of being human, with its own perspectives, knowledge, and adaptations. Preserving this diversity isn't just about maintaining quaint customs or interesting languages, it's about preserving the full range of human experience and potential. As we wrap up our exploration of the Tujia people, their rich culture, and their complex genetic heritage, we're left with a deeper appreciation for the intricacies of human identity and the value of cultural diversity. The story of the Tujia reminds us that our world is not neatly divided into distinct ethnic or cultural groups, but is rather a beautiful tapestry of interconnected communities, each with its own unique thread to contribute. In our rapidly globalizing world, the experiences of groups like the Tujia offer valuable lessons. They show us how cultures can adapt and evolve while maintaining a sense of distinct identity. They demonstrate the importance of preserving diverse cultural traditions as sources of wisdom, creativity, and resilience. And they remind us that beneath our superficial differences, we share a common human heritage. As we conclude this journey through Tujia culture and history, let's reflect on what we've learned and consider its broader implications. Our exploration of the Tujia people has taken us on a fascinating journey through time, culture, and even genetics. From the mist-shrouded mountains of southwestern China to the cutting-edge laboratories of genetic researchers, we've uncovered a story that is at once unique and universal. The Tujia's experience shows us that cultural identity is a complex, multifaceted thing. It's shaped by history, geography, and tradition, but also by the choices people make in the present. The efforts of the Tujia to preserve their heritage while adapting to the modern world remind us that culture is not a static artifact, but a living, evolving entity. We've seen how practices like the Baishou dance or traditional crafts like brocade weaving can serve as repositories of cultural knowledge, carrying ancient wisdom into the future. But we've also seen how these traditions can be reinvented and reinterpreted for new contexts, finding fresh relevance in a changing world. The genetic studies of the Tujia challenge our assumptions about ethnicity and identity. They remind us that human populations are not isolated islands, but interconnected networks shaped by centuries of migration and exchange. This understanding can help us move beyond simplistic notions of racial or ethnic purity and appreciate the rich complexity of human diversity. As we face global challenges like climate change, biodiversity loss, and social inequality, the value of cultural diversity becomes ever more apparent. Each culture represents a unique way of understanding and interacting with the world, a distinct set of solutions to the challenges of human existence. By preserving and learning from diverse cultural traditions, we expand our collective toolkit for addressing the problems of our time. The story of the Tujia also highlights the importance of balance between tradition and innovation, between cultural preservation and economic development, between maintaining a distinct identity and participating in a global society. Finding this balance is a challenge faced not just by the Tujia, but by communities around the world. As we conclude, I encourage you, our viewers, to reflect on your own cultural heritage. What traditions or practices from your background hold special meaning for you? How have they evolved over time? And how might they continue to adapt and find relevance in our rapidly changing world? I also invite you to look beyond your own cultural boundaries. What can we learn from the experiences of groups like the Tujia? How can we foster greater understanding and appreciation of cultural diversity in our own communities? Thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of the Tujia people. If you've enjoyed this exploration, please like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the world's fascinating cultures. And don't forget to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Remember, in our interconnected world, every culture has a story to tell and wisdom to share. By listening to these stories and appreciating our diverse heritage, we enrich our understanding of what it means to be human.